All right, welcome back to the IMNerd podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freyway, and I'm here with my great co-host, Kenny.
Woo!
And we are going to be talking about the long-anticipated episode for My Hero Academia. This episode has been basically forecasted for a while now, and for whatever reason, we've just kept putting it off. And finally, I asked Kenny the other day, what are we going to do on the podcast this week? And he said, let's just do My Hero, let's get it out the way. So I am so excited because this is one of my absolute favorite anime. It just has a lot of the things that I liked about the original Naruto, and I'm probably going to compare it to Naruto a lot because before Naruto became Shippuden and only focused on Naruto and Sasuke, I feel like it was one of the greatest animes ever. And
funnily enough, literally today, I mean, when you're hearing this tomorrow, but we're recording this on Tuesday.
Yes.
Anyway, earlier today on Tuesday, we just released a clip on the YouTube, and the clip pretty much opens up with you talking about how before Naruto Shippuden and early Naruto with all the other characters and like the stuff that you used to love about regular Naruto, and then we talk about Naruto.
Yep. I was a real big fan of Naruto as a kid. I mean, obviously I grew up with it. It's one of my childhood anime, and it's cool to hate on Naruto because of how bad it ended and all that stuff as far as Shippuden goes. But regular Naruto had a lot of things going for it. The main thing is the characters. It had a bunch of unique characters, and they all had their own little clans. They all came from different backgrounds, different cultures, and essentially they all worked together in this one village. So My Hero is very similar in the sense that you have all these different kids who have all these superpowers, aka quirks, as they call them in this world. And the quirks grant them different Kekkei Genkais, like in Naruto they call Kekkei Genkais bloodline limits. It's the same exact thing. Shoto, for example, his entire family line has either ice or fire powers, and in his case, both. So it's cool how the same type of things that happen in base Naruto with, like, let's say Neji's clan, they all can do like Kaiten or I don't know what it's called in English, but I always watch the Japanese with the English subtitles. And so, he has like the six palms or 64 palms and divination and everything like that. They have a lot of the similar things going on in My Hero. And I guess to start off, like where we can begin with this is just the world building that My Hero accomplishes in season 1, because I feel like the first 12 episodes are a prologue in every sense of the word. Like not much actually happens. They just kind of set up the world. So did you?
That's something that's interesting about My Hero is like when you look back on it, because right now we're in season 6 and like shit is balls to the wall. It's going crazy right now. And when you look back at season 1 and then even through all of the other seasons and how we got there, it's so crazy how far away it feels.
Yes.
Like the amount the tone has shifted, how much darker it's gotten, the way they're like, as the series progresses, especially toward the end, like through season 4, then 5, and now in like how them trying to like snuff out the light and like kill inspiration.
The stakes are very high right now.
Yeah, and then when you look at season 1, it's kind of all about hope. It's like shining that light really, really brightly and making you inspired and making you hopeful. And they do that in a really good way to then like try to snuff it out. But like you said, in season 1, it's weird because in some ways it feels fast-paced, but then at the same time when you look at it, not a lot happens. And I think that ends up, at least for me, creating a really comfortable pacing where I'm enjoying each episode. I'm learning things about the world with each episode as I grow with it. And there's always something new that's happening as I'm going through it for the first time. But then when I look back at it, I'm like, oh my God, in the grand scheme of things, like at this point, nothing has happened.
Yeah. So let's start off with what they set up. 80% of the world has a superpower. 80% of the world is born with a quirk. And the main character, Izuku Midoriya, he was born as one of the 20% of people who just does not have a quirk at all. He is a normal human being like me and you, which really fucking sucks. And I related to this character.
80% of the world had a magic power.
Bro, I would be pissed. So immediately he's depressed for life, right? Like that's just depressing, but he makes the best of it. Like the worst part about him is that he is a hero fanatic. Like the kid, Deku, is a fanatic. He loves heroes. He loves everything about them since he was a little boy. He has his little All Might figurines. They always show flashbacks when he was a really
dude. I love his hoodies. The All Might hoodies are fire. Like we were just talking to Cordero and he had those Umbreon hoodies.
Yes.
I need some All Might hoodies.
I like them a lot. And I even like the Deku hoodies. Like he has like, when he was younger, his mom used to make his costumes for him, and it would just be like that little green, whatever the fuck that thing is that he becomes when he puts on his actual costume as a hero. But yeah, 80% of the world has a quirk. And here's the main character in this verse who literally has nothing. He is a regular human, but he loves the idea of heroes, and he wants to be a hero, but he knows that he never can be. And so from the get-go, it's really kind of depressing. And I don't know why, but I just related to this character so much because instead of being all brawn, he's very intelligent. And so I like main characters who are pretty smart, which is the reason why I never really liked the main character Naruto, because Naruto's an idiot. And like that has always bothered me. I just can't get behind any character who's dumb and just strong. And that's kind of their entire like scope of the character.
It is frustrating because not only is he kind of an idiot, it feels like now, granted, he does work hard and does train as the series goes on, but it feels like a lot of his victories aren't really earned.
Yeah, especially he kind of just like early.
Yeah, he's either has a magic demon power that just like wins the day, or like some silly shit happens, like he farts and he wins that way.
And I hate stuff like that. It's so ridiculous. Like obviously he lost to Neji, and then he has no chakra whatsoever, and then here comes a demon to like insert all the chakra into him, and he uppercuts Neji out of nowhere because Neji turned off his Byakugan. Stuff like that. It's just the typical, I won't go as far as say like Deus Ex Machina, but it's just like, okay, I get it. Like the main character, I guess, needs to win in every situation, but I appreciate main characters who don't always win. And Deku is definitely that kind of main character. I also appreciate what he has to do in order to get his wins, because we'll talk about that too. But again,
all of his wins come at a cost.
They come at like a great cost to him. And I love that about like the way they set this up. So he's born without a quirk, but early on they show that he has heroic characteristics. So his childhood best friend, Bakugo, was being attacked by some fucking slime monster in the city. And All Might was nearby, but wasn't able to help because he's going through his own nonsense. And so Deku was like, fuck it, there are no heroes able to help. And the ones that were around were just not strong enough to fight the slime monster. So Deku attacks it on his own. As a regular human being, knowing that he could 100% get killed by it, he runs in, and it actually catches the villain off guard, giving Bakugo a chance to like do something, and then All Might comes in and just one-shots the monster. And All Might takes note of the kid. Like he notices like, okay, that's really cool. They meet later on, and Deku's like, hey, do you think I could ever become a hero? And All Might recalls, what he did in the Bakugo situation. He's like, yeah, you do actually have what it takes to be a hero. And they set up this whole plan to like meet me by the beach. And he's like, listen, because Deku catches All Might when he reverts back to his weakened form.
Yeah, Small Might.
Yeah, he catches Small Might. And this is like all episode 1 and 2, and they have this really heart-to-heart conversation about what it means to be a hero and how Deku was born without a quirk. So that means he can't be heroic, but it takes more than just a quirk to be a hero. And I like that whole, like that. Yeah. Instilling that in a kid who doesn't have a quirk, who might be depressed about it, is such a heroic thing to do. Like All Might is like a perfect hero. He's so good.
He's in so many ways. The thing I love about him, and I think one of the reasons why he portrays that heroic feel and that atmosphere even more so than the other things, like All Might is essentially the Superman of this universe.
Yeah, blatantly.
But he delivers the ideal of Superman so much better than Superman does, because even though in this universe he is viewed as godly as Superman, like he can do everything, right?
Yes.
But we as viewers know that, like, first of all, he has one of the 30 powers Superman has.
Yeah.
He has one of those powers, and on top of that, he's like not as all-empowering as Superman. But then on top of that, he's doing all of this now in an era post his prime, whereas the whole world still thinks he's in his prime, and he's missing like half his organs. Like we see him in episode 1, like we learn that he is far past his prime.
Yeah.
And he is still doing everything despite his health to make sure the world still has a symbol of peace. And like that's like one of the things about a hero. It's not just you being heroic and you doing things and you being the symbol. It's you doing that despite all of these other things against you. And whereas Superman, there's no cost to Superman being super. You know what I mean? Whereas like to All Might, there is. And so he gets to be the symbol that Superman is through that adversity. And us as the viewers, at least for me, that resonates with me so much more.
Yeah, I really, really like his character design. At first, you just see him like coughing up a bunch of blood. He goes from being this really buff superhero to being this. I don't even like the. It's interesting. He looks like he was drawn by the artist who does Soul Eater when he reverts back to
Yeah,
his
yeah, he does.
his small form, because his eyes are actually the color black. Like his eyes are straight up black, and then he has like the little tiny yellow pupils in there. Uh, and then his like just the way he's drawn, he actually doesn't even look like he's from the same verse as everyone
He
else.
doesn't.
He's
He
drawn so
doesn't. He
differently,
looks
and
awful. He just
does.
looks
He
so
does.
awful.
He looks so fucking terrible. His art is so different, and then like when he calls out the blood, even that looks Looney Tune-ish. Like no one else
It is.
in the
Wait,
entire series does that.
you know what's even funny about that though is now I know you read the manga, but I don't know you didn't start with the manga, so I
No,
don't
I
think you
did
read the
not.
early chapters, right?
I didn't.
So in the
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I did.
in the early chapters of the manga, I don't think they really do this later on, but in the early chapters of the manga, they even like do small fourth wall breaks where they mention that like All Might looks different from everybody else. Like, because even like his big form, they're like he's drawn differently. Like, because like his face has all this detail. Like when they show like this super detailed muscle face and
Yeah.
everything, they're like he's not even from the same art we're from. Like, he's insane.
Do you remember later on when Deku goes to Night Eye? It's like season 3 or something.
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Go ahead.
he's like, they said the only way to get him on your side is to make him laugh. So the first thing Deku does is an All Might impersonation where he turns his actual face into All Might's face, but it looks terrifying. First of all, it just looks scary as shit. And he's drawn so different. It has so much more detail than everyone else in the anime. And obviously, Night Eye just deadpans, stares at him, and doesn't even flinch.
Oh
but
my god,
that part is so fucking funny because it's like, yo, why did the art change? Like, why did the art change for this one scene? Reminds me of One Punch Man too. One Punch Man does that a lot. You'll see the main character Saitama drawn multiple different ways. Sometimes he has no detail, and then sometimes he looks fucking dope as hell.
All of the detail.
Yeah, he just looks cool as shit. Like Goku level cool. When Goku's serious, he like All Might and Saitama, they all have that thing where they have this a joke form and then a very serious, like I'm not to be fucked with form.
To like jump ahead a small bit, and this is also an anime in general. I love when anime do the thing where it's usually at like the end of an episode, where the episode will end and it'll stop being like the way the anime looks, and it'll become a hyper detailed drawing.
Yeah.
And if you remember when Shigaraki not first met Deku, but when Shigaraki saw Deku at the mall, I forget what season it was. They're like at the mall, and Shigaraki's
last part of season 2.
And he puts his hand on Deku's neck, and then like they zoom in on Shigaraki's face, and it's just his face, and it's like this hyper detailed drawing, and you see all the cracks in his fucking face, and it looks so goddamn scary and freaky. Yeah. But I love when anime do those still moments where they hyper detail the art.
I do too, and there's a lot of those in the manga. We talked about this in the 2 episodes ago when we talked about anime in general. We discussed how One Piece there's that one panel against Enel on top of Sky PA where Luffy punches him for the last time, and how detailed that is. There are panels in the My Hero Academia manga, especially Shigaraki specifically. I'm glad you brought him up. There are panels that he has drawn so far. In fact, one of them at one point was like my profile picture on Discord, and I had to change it because I realized it could kind of send a wrong message because of what that scene was. It was the scene where Shigaraki, at the end of, I think, season 5, kills his whole family. And in the manga, they zoom in on him as a kid, and he just looks absolutely crazy. Yeah. Like he just murdered his dog, then his sister, then his mom, grandparents, and everything. And then finally he murders his dad, but on purpose. And the way he's drawn in the scene after that is so creepy and scary. And I love the picture so much. I actually sent it to Kenny when I first saw it. I was like, yo, this panel is so fire. But it's because of the detail mainly. And also just like how crazy. I didn't know that this could ever get this dark. Like Kenny said earlier, this is a very lighthearted. Season 1 is very lighthearted.
It brings you to the not only season 1, because like the whole it's so cool because the whole and it's done on purpose. My Hero Academia is supposed to, it has these moments of darkness, these moments of fear, but in all of the instances, the heroes come out so on top, and there's always this really bright light. And you have like season 2 where you find out more about Todoroki.
Yep.
And he's like all his depressions and all these horrible things he went through, but then Deku ends up being this huge light in his life and like inspires him to like go forward and to utilize his other. By the way, I don't know if an editor got to the artist of this series or if he always knew he was going to change it. But I'm so fucking happy that they changed Todoroki's original outfit. His original hero outfit is one of the worst designs I've ever seen. Do you remember it?
I don't.
It's like it's so his ice half is just out, and because he hated his dad, his like fire half of his body, it's like an ice suit, and so it's like covered with just like this ice.
I do
half
not
suit.
remember that at all.
It looks so. Look up like season 1 Todoroki outfit. He looks horrible. It is one of the worst designs ever.
This is one of the few anime/manga that I can tell that season 1 and the first 12, I guess, chapters or however long it took them to finish season 1 in the manga, you could tell that the writer didn't have it all together. You can kind of tell by so look at season 5 in contrast to season 1, how different it is, the tone. And I actually want to say this, there's a progression with this series. I won't go as far as to say that the writer's just writing it, like every week he just comes up with the idea to write the chapters. That's kind of disrespectful. And I used to use that as an insult about Naruto Shippuden during the war arc, because literally Kishimoto was writing that shit the night before. It was so bad. Like, it was just all over the place what was happening in the war arc. Things were just happening. There was no explanation. And it was like a lot of nonsense. My Hero doesn't have that per se, but I will say that some things definitely seem to be retconned or changed pretty drastically from the way they started from the beginning, as almost to say he didn't know that it would blow up this big. Like, I think that that's how the writing looks to me in season 1, is like he didn't foresee it going where it's at right now. And that's fine. Like, sometimes you create a project. The reason why I'm saying that is because, again, it starts off so lighthearted, and every season it progressively gets darker. Now, that could be by design. It could
that's kind of what I think. I think he makes the light so bright to fucking tear your soul out in some parts. You know what I mean?
And that's great if that was planned. I have a hard time believing that like it was planned to get as dark as it got in the end. Like, yeah, there's an overarching story, but I don't know if the whole thing, like, I don't know if he has the whole story finished.
Yeah, I don't think
from the beginning. I don't know. To be
fair,
from the beginning.
I don't think so either. But I was going to say, like, I'm stuttering a bit. But to be fair, I think he probably had an idea of where he was going, right? Yeah. And then as you go, you kind of fill in the details, and like things get fleshed out, and things probably get changed. An idea you thought it was good, you end up scrapping, and things change a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely evolved, and it evolved beautifully. Like, My Hero, the reason why it's I have it in my top 7 anime of all time list, and the reason why it's there is because of how it slowly evolves, and it's like progression of these characters that you're seeing over and over again. I just love that. Usually, shonens have been very high and low for me. Some of them are really good, and then some of them, they just don't do it for me because they either go on too long, they stop developing the characters who we loved. Things just start to go awry because it's so, once you write something for so long, like you get so many chapters in, it just starts to fall apart unless you're the best writer in the world, aka Oda. Like,
where they become like too much of the shonen formula, right? Like, I think we mentioned it before. We mentioned it before, and I feel bad because I mention it too often, but I'm just going to mention it again. Like Black Clover. I enjoy it, right?
That's the exact one I had in my mind too.
It is so it's like so stringently the shonen formula. Like, it is the shonen.
It is. It follows every trope. Every single trope that can happen happens in Black Clover. And My Hero is really cool to me because we are going through, I guess we finished it. We were going through a period of hero movies that have dominated the box office in America. And honestly, globally too, but just like, speaking from a person who has only lived in this country, in the US, like Marvel had completely dominated the last decade, right? Like, that has been literally the box office. If you look at the top movies of all time, it's like Infinity War, Endgame, like those like No Way Home. It's just a bunch of hero movies. It's just like Batman and stuff like that, The Dark Knight. So heroes have dominated our box office and our entertainment industry for a decade now. And
easily a decade.
Like, easily a decade. And it's honestly over a decade, but I'm just going to say that because it's 2022.
Yeah.
Endgame was like years ago now, which is crazy to think. But Endgame was
fucking wild.
Endgame was pre-pandemic, right? Because like movies were still available.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But I say all to say, heroes have dominated the entertainment industry for a while now. And I personally do not really like Marvel shows and Marvel movies. There's only a handful that I think are actually good. I've said this opinion on this podcast a lot. I genuinely just don't think that I think the Marvel shows are god awful. Like most of them are just unplayable, but like we watch them because they are nerd related. And I feel like Marvel knows this too, which makes it suck. But Marvel knows that they kind of have us by the balls because we've seen so much of the content that it's kind of like, well, I have to finish it now. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Not only that is like like all the stories are interwoven.
Yes.
So when you like, I want to see when Loki season 2 comes out, I'm watching it.
Same.
But that one was good to see. Yeah, I know. But the thing that kind of sucks is that you have to see all the other shows that kind of suck in order to probably fully understand Loki season 2.
Yeah, and that's really annoying, but it's working because they have this web and they're just weaving all of the bad shows in with the good shit to make sure that you see everything that they put out. But I'm noticing that in my personal opinion, the quality of the shows and the movies has dipped since Endgame and No Way Home. Like it has not been the same quality, I feel like. Definitely a lot of the same tropes are there though. Like the laughter, Marvel's always been very comedic on everything that they do. All of that's there. I think the storytelling is what I'm saying though. Like I think
they're like treading water. I think they want to move into the new Kang the Conqueror arc.
Yes.
But they know they can't do it right away because that would be like weird. Yeah. So they got to like tread water with like filler arcs. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of like doing some filler arcs to try to build it up.
After every major One Piece arc, Oda writes several chapters that are just literally filler. Like not filler, but what I mean by that is they're filler to get to the next major arc. You can't just go You can't just go Whole Cake Island right into Wano.
Yeah.
Right. Like you have to have in between those two what happened. And filler might be the wrong word to use here, but what we mean by that is just it is a section that is not considered an arc, but things do happen, right? Like things are Scarlet Witch, and all the things that happen with Doctor Strange, and now he has that third eye, and that's with him now for God knows how long, right? Like that is something that's happened to him. So a lot of the things that are going on with the multiverse, they're important, but we're not actually in the arc yet with Kang the Conqueror. We're kind of
arc that we want to see.
We're getting into like how this even happened. So Loki was how it happened. They killed the Kang that was keeping everything in line so that he said, look, there's other ones worse than me. But anyway, not to get too deep into the Marvel stuff specifics, the point is, I think My Hero does it better.
Yeah,
I think My Hero just does the hero genre better. And this is, again, something that Kenny and I have expressed on this podcast before. But I just think that they do it better.
So
go ahead.
One quick example on just to wrap up the One Piece example is like those in between moments in One Piece, like they happen in there just like they happen in the Marvel movies. But when they happen in One Piece, there's like really impactful things that really draw you in. Like some of the greatest moments in One Piece happen after an arc ends, and you're like, what the fuck?
Honestly,
and then you go,
the greatest moments do happen in between.
Which is crazy because you get this awesome arc that you're waiting for, and then all of a sudden the thing you weren't waiting for is even better, and you're like, what is happening?
Yes.
So anyway, Marvel hasn't really delivered that. But then to get to the actual point, like Fraser said, we're talking about heroes here, and I also think My Hero just does it better. And what's fucked up is the ongoing debate of like, can they ever make a good live action anime or like whatever? I think what's so crazy is, like you said, America has a stranglehold on the hero box office. And looking at My Hero Academia, you would think, oh man, they could probably adapt a really good movie. And like, I don't think they could. Like, I think if they made a live action My Hero movie, it would fucking be awful.
I have no faith in the live action anime genre at all. I've yet to see one that has blown me away. I am genuinely afraid of having all of my faves be destroyed and trampled on by it, including what's coming out on Netflix soon, which is One Piece. Cowboy Bebop was actually not, to me, it wasn't like unplayable, but what was
really wasn't as bad as people say. It was really bad, but it wasn't as bad.
It was bad, but it was bad for reasons like I think the actor who played Vicious. He looked like a fucking fake Targaryen. That guy was awful. That guy made the entire show bad to me. So like, I think if you replace him, you actually might have something, because I liked every other character for the most part. Like I think that everything else was fine. Like I think the main character played him well. I don't remember that guy's name. I always call him like Harold Kumar. I think he's one of the characters from that or something. But I think he's a really good Spike. I think that they did things to capture the essence of Cowboy Bebop with the anthology and stuff like that, but with an overarching story. And so, yeah, sometimes the live actions aren't god awful, but for the most part, if I had to rank them all and do an average score, it's a failing score. Like live actions are a failing score, so I would have no faith in a My Hero. But I gotta explain myself on why I think that My Hero does it better than Marvel, because it's kind of unfair to just be like, I just think this is better. And then,
no, you got it. Yeah, definitely got to explain yourself.
So Marvel,
and I'm with you, by the way. I'll have my own points.
Yeah, Marvel doesn't do a good job to me, outside of a few movies, of creating actual tension and strife with its heroes. I think that one of the best things about My Hero is the struggle and the strife that the characters go through in My Hero is so visceral. And what I mean by that is, in Marvel, the only movies where I really feel like, oh my God, like there's incredible tension and crazy impact are like Winter Soldier, the reveal of who killed Tony Stark's parents, stuff like that. Like that's fucking huge. Like Civil War, like all of those, that whole arc, Winter Soldier, Civil War, kind of like one big arc. And then obviously Infinity War Endgame is another like really big arc. Pretty much, and No Way Home, if that counts as a Marvel movie, even though it's like Sony and all that bullshit, but you get the idea. These are Marvel heroes. And so everything that happens in No Way Home, like you feel it. Also, like Andrew Garfield, his redemption arc and stuff like that. I cried during No Way Home because it's 20 years of building. And that, I guess, is what has been done well for just Spider-Man. But I don't feel the same way about Captain America from the first movie until his end, or like some of the other characters from their beginning to their end. I just don't feel like they've been developed in a way that makes me actually care enough. And that could be Marvel's failure with just me as a person. Like maybe I just don't get the character development that they're trying to convey. But like, for example, I think Doctor Strange from the first movie that he's in, where he's just a doctor who's very arrogant and pompous, I actually think that he progressed way too quickly between his very first movie, which is the first time you ever see him. I think he progressed way too quickly from his first movie until where he is in Multiverse of Madness. Like it is honestly kind of crazy how much different he is. It's like not his core things, because he's still cocky, but just like all the things that have happened, it seems like a little too much too fast. Whereas I think that he would like a show, and this is what I think manga and anime are a better medium for character development.
And just shows in general.
Yeah, shows are just better. You don't get to see Doctor Strange except in movies, and he's only in a few of them. So every time you see him, they developed him. They made him more of a doctor. Like he's getting more and more into that role and less into when he was a human and stuff. But it's almost unbelievable because of how fast it's happening on screen. It's like, holy shit, this much time has passed. But I don't really understand how this character got to the point where he's like this now. Like he says things in Multiverse of Madness, then I'm just like, okay, like I don't agree with it. You guys can listen to how we felt about Multiverse of Madness. We have a whole podcast episode explaining it and why I personally did not like that movie, but also like the motivations for like Wanda and stuff like that. I feel like could have been better written. And I get that there's a book that's all evil, is like the Lord of the Rings, that whole thing with the ring that corrupts you and stuff. The whole point is that like the development is just not done in a progressive enough manner, like a slow progression that makes it believable. I just don't believe Marvel superheroes. Whereas My Hero, because you're watching the same characters chapter after chapter, week after week, episode after episode, slowly develop into who they are. It's like, I didn't miss anything here. Like the character, there was no time skip or anything. So you'd be like, what the hell happened to this guy? Like, why is he acting like this now?
I want to add on to that. As you were talking, I actually, mid you talking, I changed my example to a different example that I thought fit your example even better. Okay. First, I was going to mention Bakugo, right? Yep. When you look at Bakugo and his character development from the start to where we are now, and we're not going to give manga spoilers about anything in general. So
yeah, this is anime only, of course.
But from the start to where we are at the start of season 6, Bakugo has grown a lot. Even that he's still kind of like the little shithead that he always has been.
He's definitely annoying.
But we've learned so much more about him. We understand him so much more. Like when you look at us, I think it's season 2, maybe it's season 3, when Bakugo gets kidnapped, and we're sitting here thinking like, oh, we're about to go into Sasuke retrieval arc. And then like that doesn't happen. They just get there. But the fact that I knew people in real life that were like, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. Bakugo is going to become evil. He's going to become a villain. And like they thought Bakugo was going to get like turned to the other side because of the shithead character he was. But then he shows like some of his more values. And anyway,
let me
go
interject
ahead.
real quick right there, because I was one of the people who was like, God damn it, this is literally Sasuke all over again. It was even a retrieval arc. There was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Bakugo retrieval arc. I was like, yo, this guy's gonna turn evil, and I should have saw this coming. But I was so annoyed that My Hero was doing basically the anime trope that's been done so many times. We've seen that so many times, and it was boring. In that moment, I was like, I'm bored of this already. Like, I'm bored of the
Yep.
fact that this thing that I love so much, because I love seasons 1 and 2 for what they were. I liked them a lot. And then season 3, when Bakugo got captured, I was like, bro, the fact that he's about to become evil and be like the main antagonist is so corny to me. I've seen that so many times. And then it completely blindsided me when this man was just like, actually, fuck y'all. The League of like, he didn't care for the League of Villains at all. He was never at any point down with them. And that shocked me. I was shocked, but then you find out later on there's a reason for that. And I'll let you finish your point.
Oh, so we can talk more about Bakugo in a bit. My point is, like, we see his development all the way through, and his development feels believable while him still being the same character.
Yeah.
But to go to a more fair example, because Bakugo is an upfront and center, like, secondary main character, whereas Doctor Strange throughout all of Marvel, you know, like you said, he's only in certain things.
He comes out pretty late too, right? Like Marvel's already established, and then Doctor Strange comes at kind of like the fourth quarter. Like Doctor Strange comes in the fourth quarter. His first movie is Doctor Strange. His second movie is probably Infinity War or something. Like
something like that. So to give a more fair example of a character that doesn't have a lot of screen time, but I think has incredible and believable character development, Endeavor. When you look at Endeavor from season 1 and what you learn about him, Endeavor is an absolute piece of shit.
Yep.
He's a horrible father. He's just like not a good person, not a good father, and he put his kids through hell. And that doesn't change.
Yeah.
Because it can't change. The past doesn't change. Something I hate that sometimes things do is like, this person's horrible. But then you find out that like he was horrible for a good reason. And it's like and like My Hero doesn't do that. Endeavor's horrible. Everybody recognizes that he was horrible, and that doesn't change. And he can't make that go away. He can't spin that to be a good thing. But he legitimately grows as a person as it goes on. He doesn't get a ton of screen time. But when you see him and the moments that he has with his son, the moments he has with other people, the moment he has with his fans, and then when he has to take up the mantle as the new #1 hero, what that means to him and like the trials and tribulations he then goes to and the faith he puts in other people like Hawks, he grows so much, and he really makes an effort to try to become a better father. And he respects and accepts the fact that like his kids aren't gonna just accept that right away.
Right. Like they're not gonna be like, oh, you said you changed, and you're forgiven. Just
and
because
you're forgiven. That doesn't happen, and he knows that won't happen. But in his strive to be a better person, he continues to like still give them their space and not like be overbearing, because like he knows what he did was wrong, but then also still be there and like be there for his children. And like they show all these great moments where like his one son who like fucking hates him, when they see on TV that like
his name is,
I think so. When they see on TV that like Endeavor might die fighting this one Nomu, like he's torn up and crying, like he doesn't want his dad to die, but then at the same time, when that's all over, he's still not going to go and give his dad a hug, because even though that's his dad and there was that moment, that child still, like, that doesn't take away everything that already happened and what his dad then put him through. So my point is, like, there's this big, complex relationship with Endeavor as a person, as a hero, as a father, and as a husband. And the horrible things he done, and him trying to grow as a person and become a better person. And, like, the way they do that through My Hero Academia is fucking amazing, especially for a character who realistically does not get that much screen time, similar to Doctor Strange.
Yeah, like Endeavor is a fully developed character, and now he's more front and center. Like as we are in the anime season 6, episode like 2, I think, or whatever. He's more front and center now for obvious reasons. Like, you know, All Might, after fighting All for One, basically can't be the #1 hero anymore. So it just kind of by default passes to Endeavor, even though they show us the gap between All Might and Endeavor is night and day, heaven and earth. It's ridiculous. But yes, Endeavor is now the #1 hero. So there's a lot of spotlight on him, even in the manga and in the show. And I kind of like that about it, because that makes sense that he would now get more visibility being #1, right? So like the writing has reflected him being #1. At first I was like, well, this guy's #2. And honestly, it's kind of fucked up, but people really don't care about #2 like that, including me. So even when I knew that he was the #2 hero, I was like, okay, whatever. You get to see him fight like in one of the earlier seasons real quick when Deku first runs into Gran Torino and they start training together, and then I think a Nomu appears in the city in the Stain arc, like season 2.
Yeah.
And you get to see Endeavor basically hold a fucking Nomu's head, and his fire goes from being red to blue on a Nomu's head, and it's like completely incinerates the monster. I was like, okay, this guy's pretty cool, but you know, I never really cared about him. And there was a little blurb in season 2 about Todoroki's trauma, his childhood trauma, and his mom had thrown like a hot tea kettle of water in his face, and that's how he got the burn mark. And it's because she hated the fire side of him. And like, there's a whole bunch of development with that entire family. Like the whole Todoroki family has a ton of development, and it's kind of cool because he's not the main character. He's one of the top characters, right? Like he's pretty memorable. He's one of the top 3 in a class, but he's not the main character. And yet they have his entire family in the manga as a pretty center of attention topic frequently. Like
his family has far more development. I mean, in terms of Deku's family, it's just his mom, and like his mom is just his mom. Like she doesn't do anything.
Yeah, she's literally only thing she's done is go from being like really skinny season 1, and then she's gained some visible weight in a later seasons out of nowhere. I just kind of like they just started drawing her kind of chubby. She looks cuter, but it's just funny that that's the only thing that we know about. We don't really know anything about his mom, and I'm realizing we also don't know anything, like you said, we don't know anything about his dad either, which is that might be a reveal later on. I could imagine.
It's one of those things. I wonder. I kind of hope at this point we just never see his dad.
Because
like, I kind of just hope he's just a deadbeat dad, and like he just
because if his dad is revealed, it would be some bullshit if he's anybody significant, right? Like If his dad is literally anyone, I'm talking
it would be awesome. If like in the last chapter they reveal his dad, and it's like he just got back from a business trip, like he was just like in Korea on a business trip, and that was it. He's like a regular salary man,
ass person. But Shoto's whole family is actually a big part of the manga and of the story, and it develops Shoto more, but it also randomly just develops Endeavor, their now number 1 hero, and it makes him this believable character who's trying to atone, despite the fact that his children aren't willing to just outright forgive him. That's a real life thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like Japanese manga writers, they capture real life, I think, better than Marvel just makes a joke out of everything for them. Like it's just too much of a joke all the time. And I don't feel the realism, like even people with superpowers will still go through regular things, like just real life, regular things. And that just doesn't happen enough in Marvel for me to care, which is why I think the Spider-Man movies are so good, because Peter Parker's just trying to be, like Spider-Man's just trying to be normal. He's going to school. He has friends. He's constantly just trying to be normal, and it's not working. Whereas all the other ones are like, I'm a hero. I just do hero shit. One is a fucking trillionaire. And it's like, they're just not relatable. They're not really all believable. One of them is a fucking, I don't know, has a green alien, not literally a green alien, but like has green energy that turns him into a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And he's like
and
a scientist, like some nuclear physicist, crazy intelligent scientist. Like, you're not that's not.
Because My Hero does take, the quirks, the superpowers, it's all unbelievable, but the characters are so grounded and so real, and they have such relatable traits and qualities and struggles and stripes that they go through, and they have time to simmer. The thing with Endeavor's plotline is that if it was a movie, it would have to be resolved in a movie.
Yes.
Like movies don't really like leaving loose ends like that to then be like dealt with later. Whereas like something like a manga or an anime will let a loose end be a loose end for 300 chapters.
Yeah. Also,
before
like how you used the word simmer. That was good. Nice pun. That was good. But yeah, I think that there's just, and it could just be because my gripe really is honestly the medium. Like if My Hero was only movies, right? If My Hero was only released as movies, I don't think I would like it as much. Because like
possible.
It would just be 2-hour flicks where everything has to happen in that 2 hours until the next years later 2-hour movie where I get to see these characters again. So in a way, the Marvel shows are attempting to develop the characters better. And now that we're saying this, I think, even though I didn't really care, like I don't really care for the Hawkeye. I don't care for Hawkeye as a character, but I have to be honest, because I'm going to be honest. The Hawkeye show actually made me resonate so much more with that character because of how just his life. He just lives a regular life. He had the hearing aid. You found out he could barely hear. He has all these other problems, obviously his family and stuff like that. And he doesn't want to be a hero. He just wants to be a regular dad. Like he just wants to live, have Christmas, watch movies with his family. And he's trying to avoid getting back into the hero life, but that's hard to do because it's something that he's been doing for so long. You know how hard is the old habits die hard. He's very believable in the show. In the movies, Hawkeye is fucking nothing.
Yeah,
Like, he's
the Hawkeye show has aspects of it that are really good, and we talked about that. There's stuff about that show that are really good. It's just like, so Hawkeye show has moments that are really good and character moments that are believable. It's just the show's plot is horrible.
Yeah, the show's plot is not good, but developing Hawkeye is done really well. So much so to the point where at the beginning of Endgame, he is the first scene of Endgame. His family gets snapped away. That's how Endgame opens up. And when that happens, honestly, I was just kind of in a movie theater with a blank stare. Like I see that his, 1 minute his family was asking about hot dogs and shit like that. They were doing a barbecue. And then the next minute he turns around and they're all gone. And we as viewers know, oh shit, they were part of the snap. Like all of them. He got really unlucky because everyone is a 50-50. Like, sorry, you could roll a coin and your entire family could be wiped out. He got fucked over. His entire family got wiped out. He was left by himself. And that turned him into Ronin and all that stuff. But when you see it in the movie, this is actually a great example. Hawkeye's probably the perfect example for this and why I think the movies, like the Marvel movies, suck when it comes to developing the characters. So you see his family die or go away. He snapped away. And then a couple scenes later in Endgame, he's Ronin and he's just killing people. But we don't really understand.
It just happens.
How you go from being a hero to flat out, it's the same thing with Daenerys Targaryen. Like you went from being a hero to flat out murdering people as Ronin with nothing in between. Like it was like, okay, so I'm just supposed to understand that you just snapped and that made you go on a murdering spree. Whereas in the show, you get to see him slowly transition from like his temperament. You can see how he is, why he is the way he is. There's stuff like Thanos was right written on the stalls and stuff like that. People asking him for pictures in a bathroom, which is fucking annoying. People making musicals about his life when this man has a fucking hearing aid in and he's actually going through all kinds of PTSD, blatantly going through PTSD, but he's forced because his kids need to see this fucking Broadway musical where they're portraying everything that happened. All these events, by the way, are traumatic for him. Like all the explosions that he survived and have fucked up his hearing, fucked up his eyesight and stuff like that. Like all of these things that have happened to him are not good, but they're being made a joke by the rest of the world. And seeing that, it's me seeing that makes me believe Hawkeye as a character. So when he is Ronin, or like when he was Ronin, it's more believable, the idea, okay, I see how this guy slowly descended because the way the world is around him. Yeah. Like the world made him like this. And so it's really interesting how in one way the Marvel shows are good for developing the characters further, but then their scripts are so fucking uninteresting.
Yeah. Their plots and their scripts are just horrible.
The scripts are so bad that it's like, God damn it. I know, and I haven't watched it yet, but I know one of them just had She-Hulk had like Megan Thee Stallion twerking, and that was the only thing I saw trending about that entire show. And
I heard about that.
I don't exactly like you heard about it. I didn't watch a single episode. At some point, I think me and Kenny will reviewed the show, and I was
for sure.
I was gonna ask if you wanted to like watch that and just like do a like watch it in one day or whatever, and then review it because I think it's over now. But my point is, the Marvel shows, they're always trying to do like these wow factor things in terms of. They're
also trying to like create memes.
They're definitely creating memes. They're definitely part of the TikTok culture. Like it's just a bunch of that. And the stories themselves contained within these shows are just not that good.
Yeah.
So I think it's the medium. I don't think that the movies do a good job. And that's why I said I think the Hawkeye / Ronin is a great example because in Endgame, his family dies in front of us. And tell me if I'm crazy here, guys, but like when you watch his family disappear, it's like, yeah, that's fucked up. But you don't really know Hawkeye.
Yeah, so I agree with almost everything you just said. The only slight disagreement I have is that I don't think it's just the medium in that, like, obviously I do overall think the medium of long-form television shows or a book or manga chapters or whatever you want it to be, I do think they're better at conveying a full story than a movie is. Yeah. A movie has its own merits in different ways, but so in general, I think you're right. But the reason why I don't think it's just the mediums, because like you said, Marvel does have now a bevy of television shows, like the Hawkeye show. And although they have great moments in them, the overall script writing and the plot for the shows is usually very fucking weak. Yeah. Half of them still use generic military white guy as a bad guy. Yep. And it's just like...
The Falcon and Winter Soldier, we still haven't reviewed that show yet. It was so hard for me to watch it. I hated it so much. I also felt like it was pandering to black people, which I don't like. It just wasn't a good show. and I don't even want to watch it again to review it. Like honestly, it was just not fun. So when you say generic white guy is like the villain, the first thing that came to my mind was that.
Yeah.
Like the first thing, generic soldier white guy is the main villain, or like something stupid like that. It's like, god damn it, like this show is just not. But go ahead.
Then, well, no. Anyway, yeah. So, they have the opportunity with longer form TV shows, and they still don't necessarily deliver on all of those. Some of the like more high concept ones, like WandaVision, I think are excellently done.
Yeah.
But then most of the other ones aren't. Anyway, to transition like to loop de loop back, and then if you want to say something else, but the loop de loop back to something you said now like 20 or so minutes ago. I think with Shigaraki, and like when you meet this character, and as you kind of see him grow and you see where he came from and you learn his backstory and you see like sort of the horrible thing that happens to him as a child. Like there's things that you see with him as a child because like he can't control his power and he's like scratching his eyes and his eyes are all like torn up and nasty looking, and I don't know, like
his quirk is fucked.
The way they developed that character into becoming like the villain that he's going to end up becoming is like so beautiful, as he is sort of all for one's prodigy. Also, as a side note that I just remembered, for anybody that knows Shigaraki knows that he has all these hands all over him. And so when he's first introduced, he has all these hands, right? Which is like a really quirky, sort of unique and interesting
it's a very
look for a villain
thing too. It's like, oh, that's really cool. Like he's anime as fuck looking.
Yeah, those hands end up having a legit fucking backstory.
Yes.
That we've already hinted to, kind of. But then the other thing that I think is really funny is that I remember something I like about reading manga is you get like insight to the author's thoughts. This happens in like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So in My Hero Academia, in the back of a lot of the manga chapters, you'll get like little insights to his thoughts. And so one of them, he shows the design of Shigaraki and all the hands on him. And he says that, growing up, I'm going to sort of paraphrase this. I don't remember exactly, but he says, like, as you learn how to draw growing up, drawing hands is like the hardest part for a lot of people. People really have a hard time learning how to draw hands. And so he decided he was going to like make it like somewhat inspired by that. He made a character where like he had all of these hands all over him because
a challenge,
the hardest thing. Yeah, that's a challenge. And then he was like, I think the design came out really cool, was really awesome, but sometimes like I dread my own idea because like now I have to draw that fucking character all the time, and like drawing all those hands is not easy.
Yeah, that's true. And he eventually gets rid of them, right? It's like Shigaraki only has, I think now in season 6 or whatever, or like at the end of season 5, he has like the one on his face. The rest of them got fucked over after he fought Reed Destro. But okay, so we've done like a really deep dive into Marvel versus My Hero and like the differences and stuff like that, the mediums, all those things, the plot. And so My Hero I just believe Deku going from being a quirkless human being who is a fanatic of heroes into becoming a hero because the number one hero in the world saw him do something heroic. And I know I'm using this word a lot right here, but as I'm thinking and talking, there's like no other way around not using the word hero. As the number one hero sees him like do something heroic, he tells him, and this is really inspiring, that's not the only, having a quirk is not what makes you a hero.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not how it works. It's who you are. So you can be a hero. And then he eventually, to kind of speed through what happens in season 1, he gives him a piece of his hair to ingest, which is really fucking weird. But that's how he transfers the quirk one for all to Deku. And when Deku first gets it, the main thing about like him in season 1 is that his quirk breaks his body parts when he uses it because his body is not as developed as All Might's was. And the quirk gets stronger as it's passed down. So every person who gets it, like every successor of that quirk is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So Deku is theoretically going to be, like not immediately, but he's going to be the strongest user of the quirk ever because it gets developed by everyone. And that's kind of the whole point of it. When he's using it though, in the beginning, it has incredible drawbacks. Like literally the first time he uses it is against a big ass machine in a training exercise. And it's about to hurt Araraka, his like crush or whatever. It's about to hurt her. So he flies up in the air and does like a fucking Detroit smash or whatever. I love the naming convention for all the attacks too, by the way. Just them being named after like states and
Texas
stuff.
Smash, yes. Detroit Smash, yeah.
It's really cool. Or like cities, I guess, because like Michigan. But yeah. So I like that he does all these like attacks with cities and states and that whole thing. But he uses it the first time, and his fucking arm is literally flailing, and it's the color purple. It's like flailing as he's falling to his death. And
Dude, not just his arm, both his legs, right? Because he uses his power to jump fucking 50 feet in the air. So as he's falling, his legs are just like flopping in the fucking wind, and his one arm, awful.
So when you first are watching this anime, you don't really know how dark it is, because even though episode 1, they kind of show you All Might has this incredible wound, but he seems like a Looney Tune character. So I didn't take it too seriously. But then when you see Deku actually get the power, and later on in season 1, he starts using the power and it starts literally breaking this, mind you, this is a kid. It's literally breaking his fucking limbs. And it's the way they look, the color pink, purple that they draw them.
You can see it's all this internal bleeding. All the bones in there are fucking shattered.
So I was like, what the fuck is this? As I'm watching, I'm like, what is this? This is really kind of like, this is a little fucked. Like, why would you give this kid this ability that he can't handle, and it's destroying him? And then the kid also is such a hero at heart that he can't help it.
He's such a hero at heart that he, to his own detriment, always does the heroic thing. In that moment when Uraka, it was this test to get into the school UA, and all these different robots worth a certain amount of points, but then there was a giant robot that was worth 0 points. Nobody was supposed to kill it.
Yep.
It was, you were supposed to run from it. There was nothing you could do about it. And so this giant robot was about to hurt Uraka, and everybody ran away, rightfully so. Beating it is near impossible, and then on top of that, you don't get any points anyway. Deku at this time didn't have any points. He's still a rookie. Everybody grew up with their powers. He just got his power, a couple months ago or a couple weeks ago. And instead of running away like everybody else, instead of going for the points like everybody else, going for what you need to do to win, he sees somebody that needs to be saved. And then he goes and takes on this giant robot that you're not supposed to fight, to take it down with no regard, no care for his own life. Because then he's falling from 50 feet in the sky, and he's used his power. His body's broken. Like, how is he going to survive this fall? And luckily, Uraka ends up saving him, but without
really good.
Same thing as when he saved Bakugo. He doesn't think about the aftermath, what's going to happen to him. He just wants to save the person. He wants to save Bakugo. He wants to save Uraka. He goes, and then after he saves the person, like whatever happens to me, be damned.
And that's consistent with his character, and it makes him such a complex character. On one hand, like I said, he is actually a really smart protagonist, and I mean that like actual intelligence. Like, Shikamaru is really intelligent, and some of the other anime protagonists, Light and Kogias as Lelouch, like there's all these geniuses. Midoriya is pretty fucking smart. When he does this little thing, it's kind of funny when he does it. He goes mutter, 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 mutter. And he's always thinking about plans, and he comes up with a really good idea. But I like the fact they actually show him having to think about it first.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't get to see anime protagonists think before they do something. They just kind of do it, and then it's a big reveal what they were planning. And then it's like, oh shit, that actually worked out, or it didn't work out. I like that Deku genuinely thinks, but he thinks really quickly. And I honestly will put him in a class, like, he's pretty fucking intelligent. Like, he's just
very intelligent.
He's
and
very, very smart.
That not only we get to see him think, we get to see him write in his notebook and do all these little things. And all of that kind of put together. Here's something, I remember when you first, or I don't know, I'm not going to say when you first got into My Hero Academia, because I don't know when that was. But when you and me first talked about My Hero together, is what I should say.
Yeah.
I was so happy to find out that you liked Deku. Because I know you, as in general, the kind of characters you like, and like, overall, exactly Fraser's like, he can be callous, right? Fraser can be callous.
Yes.
And and here's the thing, so many, and this is something I just didn't understand. So many people, one of their complaints at My Hero Academia is that they say Deku is a crybaby. They say he's a crybaby, and that, they hate Deku, and he's so annoying, all these other things. And what's so frustrating to me is because I don't understand. First of all, like we said earlier, could you imagine being born into the world where 80% of the people have powers and you fucking don't?
You would be a crybaby too, bitch.
Yeah, you would be a crybaby. But that's second of all, he's not a crybaby about it. He goes and he studies and he learns and does everything he can to try to push forward and do things against the odds and get into. Could you imagine, most of us as people, we know that we weren't going to get into Yale. We know we weren't going to get into Harvard. And superpowers don't exist. He didn't have superpowers in the world. Superpowers exist, and he said, "No, I'm going to get into Yale. I'm going to get into Harvard. I don't fucking care." And he studied and to get there. And he had setbacks, and he cried about her. He like had these anxious anxiety moments, but like he pushed through all that and kept going forward.
And those things are very human too. Like, they make a person real and believable.
Yeah, like it's just weird. Like, and for all that he's a crybaby, which I don't agree with, he fights past all, like, what I don't remember who said it. It's like an old cliche quote, but like bravery isn't just blindly doing something because you're not scared. Bravery is doing something despite being scared. Despite him being scared or
I like
despite
that.
something being a danger to him, he goes forward and does it anyway because that's what bravery is. Bravery isn't the fact that you're not scared of anything, it's that you are scared, but you do it anyway and overcome it anyway. And so,
Me
anyway,
going to the
when
gym
you
every day.
said, yeah, right? I remember when you and me first talked about it and you talked about how much you like Deku, I was so like hype and excited because I had gotten
I
so
remember
used to
this too.
so many
I
people.
actually remember this.
Dude, I got so used to so many people just not hating Deku and saying My Hero's bad because of Deku, and I don't feel like we're watching the same show.
We're
Like, I
just
don't know
not.
what they saw.
I don't know what people want in their anime protagonists these days, but Deku is one of the best to me. Like, period. Deku is literally one of the best protagonists to me. I think that his personality is very relatable to me. Like somebody who's very book smart. Deku is a book smart and he's hardworking. So he's pretty genius level, but it's not that kind of unbelievable genius level where like he just immediately knows exactly what to do and they don't really need to even show him thinking about it. He just kind of like, I'm playing 4D chess from the beginning and I don't have to explain why I know what I know. I just know everything, right? Like he's not like that. You understand that Deku was smart because he actually puts in hard work and studies and like, yeah, he's also quick with it too. He's just not, his brain naturally is pretty fast. Which is believable. The whole crybaby thing, like you said, I don't really agree with that either. I think that's kind of a cop out to just hate on the character. I think the anime does a fantastic job of making him a believable character, especially considering being born in a world where 80%, so out of every 5 people, 4 of those motherfuckers have quirks. And here your black ass is with no quirk. Like, I would be pissed. I would be depressed. I would be oh my god, I would be depressed.
You give me anything. Let me have big ears. Give me something,
bro. I would be so depressed without a quirk. Like, it's always one thing to not have a quirk. And then it's another thing if you get a quirk and it's shitty, like big ears. Like that would fucking suck. But it's still like better than not having a quirk at all. I always say everybody needs someone to shit on. This is a sad truth about human beings. So like at the top of the totem pole, you have like white men, and then every other demographic of person is below that. And everyone shits on who's below them. If I had a quirk, even if my quirk was terrible, at least I get to shit on the people who are quirkless.
Like I remember at least when they show them as kids, one of like their friends is like a guy with long fingers. And like the guy with long fingers is like talking shit on Deku. It's like, dog, you're just a guy with long fingers. Like
you got G too, fucker. But it's like, nah, you got some kind of a quirk and it'll develop and who knows what it'll become, right? But yes, it's really I understand every time that he's ever cried about anything, I totally understand it because I think that's a real child reaction to loving something so much but not being able to partake in it. It's kind of like, so I was born with asthma and it is fucking debilitating. I wasn't able to play sports. I actually cried not many times because I quickly got over my want to play sports when I was a kid. But when I was younger, all the kids on my street would play like football and stuff like that. And, or just like play catch.
You were left out.
A very normal thing to do as kids is like play catch with a football, dribble a basketball, stuff like that, run up and down the street, play all these games where like running is required. And I literally wasn't allowed to do it because when I did, I would start wheezing and my asthma was really bad. So I would start wheezing and then I would have an asthma attack. Then I have to take an inhaler. I'd have to sit on the steps. My dad would be like, drink some water, take your inhaler. All the other kids are still running up and down, looking at me, coming to check on me. It's fucking humiliating. And it makes you feel like you're, like Kenny said, left out. And so eventually that led to me hating sports. Like I do not like sports. I never really partook in them because I wasn't allowed to actually play them, even though I had a desire to as a kid. My sickness took that away from me. And so in a way, it's like Deku, he genuinely wants to be involved in something, but he can't. And it could easily go the other way. Like there could be an opposite version of Deku that Shigaraki could have been a quirkless person who got all for one's quirk, but he hated heroes because he just was born without a quirk. Like that would have actually been a great thing, even though it's kind of like, what are the odds? That's so cliche. In a way, it's kind of cliche. Like y'all both happen to not have a quirk. Y'all both end up having a quirk now and you're opposites. But you can kind of see how Shigaraki could totally be a quirkless person who got a quirk from an evil guy. And his motivation is, I hate heroes. I hate everything about them because when I was younger, I wanted to have a quirk. I was born without one. And so it made me resent them. The same way,
the
like
that's
Yeah.
something that My Hero ends up doing is as it goes on, it shows you how this sort of society filled with light ends up warping some of the people's perspectives, and there's end up being some tragedies of people who truly wanted to be good people or good things happen, but like just the way the economy of this world works out, it kind of left them to the wayside, and that ends up making them become villains. Another quick thing on the Deku thing with being a crybaby is one more thing is like throughout the series we still see him because I've also heard people say like he has one of the strongest quirks, and it's frustrating that like he still has this or that problem. And I don't think people are taking into consideration that everybody else grew up their whole life with their quirk and honing it, whereas he got it like when he was 15 or 14 or
Yeah,
whatever.
pretty late.
And he has this whole life of anxiety and this like complex that was built into him that he has to overcome at each moment. Like he has anxiety and these complexities in him that now, even though he has this strong quirk, when he first gets it, he can't use it without destroying his body. And then like there's so many mental hurdles he has to jump over, and he still does all of that. He does it while being anxious and sometimes and like having tears in his eyes, but like he does it. And I
Yeah.
think that's commendable. That's what makes him a hero.
Yeah. So for me, My Hero's real big turning point when I put it in like one of my top of all time for me is season 3 is the turning point. Season 3 is when the Bakugo retrieval stuff happens. It's where I thought I was going to hate it.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah, yeah.
interesting. This is where I thought. So let me just do a quick recap. Season 1 is just basically set up, explaining how the world works, and then Deku gets his quirk from All Might. And essentially at the end of that, the League of Villains is shown. So you're like, okay, there's the antagonist. The League of Villains is shown. All Might comes in, even though you know that he's actually much weaker than he used to be in his prime, he still manages to thwart the threat of the League of Villains. He beats Anomu. He goes plus ultra, which is a concept of
That
going.
fight is still one of my favorite fights.
Oh,
If
easily.
you go back and rewatch All Might versus Nomu in season 1, him like talking shit and him being like them saying like, you know, he's done, All Might is gassed, and then him saying like, you know, a hero always finds his way out of a tight spot, and like him fighting him, like all this shit happening, and then when he punches him up, he does a fucking Gatling, and he does the final plus ultra punch. Listen to the goddamn voice actor say plus ultra. I could never do it justice. But the way the voice actor says like plus ultra, like the way he like the voice actor and that scene and like the All Might dog, I lose it because we know that All Might actually is gassed. We know that he is past his prime,
where everyone else
and
watching
like
doesn't.
through all of that, he's like and then like there's a part where like he knows he can't move anymore, and he's still taunting them. He's like, "Come on, come and get some," because he's trying to taunt them into like fucking off. Dude, it's an awesome scene at the end of season 1.
It's really good, and that's the first time you see somebody push past their limits, which is like that's the point of that whole fight, is seeing him push through his limits, right? So that's the season 1. Season 2, you have the sports festival. It's just a competition where all the kids get together and they show off their quirks and how to use them in unique ways to get through multiple tasks. You have Todoroki's childhood trauma. You have the internships. This is where you meet Gran Torino, who is like All Might's. He was basically like his teacher at one point. So you have Gran Torino. Then you get the Stain arc, who's a hero killer. And this guy hates heroes, but he also doesn't side with the League of Villains. They try to use him and try to bring them on their side. They try to bring Stain on their side, but Stain is just like, I'm actually not on the same mission that you guys are on. So you have that whole arc, and then
Stain hates heroes because of what they've become. He likes pure heroes like say All Might. He hates the corruption and capitalism
like
of heroes
money
where
and stuff like that. Like they do things just for money, and he doesn't like that nonsense. So yeah, Stain. There's the Stain arc, and then in this arc in season 2, All for One is mentioned for the first time. And to me, that is a big deal because up until this point, you don't really know where the League of Villains, like at the top, like who's at the top of this shit, right? Like you also don't know that All Might's quirk has an opposite.
Yeah.
Like you don't know that there's just an opposite to it, even though you might be able to guess, I guess, just based on the way it's named. Like One for All, you might be able to guess like All for One is a thing. But it gets revealed so early, like season 2 is pretty early on. It gets revealed that there is an antithesis to One for All. And so for the first time in season 2, All for One is mentioned, and you find out that basically the story is he had a little brother who he thought didn't have a quirk. So he gives him a quirk that allows him to stockpile power. Come to find out, the little brother actually did have a quirk. The quirk is to pass down quirks to other people. So I know that's kind of confusing, but essentially, he has a quirk that can allow him to transfer quirks, even though it doesn't do anything on its own when you think about it. He can keep transferring it technically. So I can keep, like, eventually I could transfer my quirk to someone, and that person, if they already have a quirk, can then transfer my quirk that I gave them and also whatever they had to someone else. So it kind of cultivates power. But in order to be able to do that at all, he needed All For One, the older brother, the evil guy, to give him the quirk to stockpile power. So that's basically what One For All actually is a combination of like two quirks, the ability to pass down and also the ability to stockpile power. Anyway, you found out about that. And then they have final exams. Final exams, we talked about this in a previous episode. All it is them fighting against the teachers, but the teachers all have limiters on.
Yeah.
And they have to find unique ways, not to necessarily beat the teachers, but to put a handcuff on the teachers or to get through a gate. If they get through the gate, they succeed. So yeah, that's a really cool arc. And we talked about how insane it was that Bakugo and Deku end up having to fight against All Might. And he is fucking, when I saw that shit animated, he is absurd. Mind you, he's at such a detriment with the limiter being placed on him and not being able to go as hard as he actually can. Mind you, he's also technically dying, and his quirk is also slowly transferring into Deku still. So like, as that's happening, as Deku is getting more in tune with the quirk, he's losing the quirk at the same time.
Yeah.
At the end of this arc, season 2, is the scene that Kenny brought up earlier. Shigaraki in a mall. He pulls up out of nowhere in a hoodie. No one knows who it is. And he puts 4 of his fingers around Deku's neck. And he says, how many people do you think I could kill before you can actually get the heroes here? And that shit, the tension. So this is another thing I was talking about earlier, with the reason why I think they do it better than Marvel. Tension. The tension in that scene when he's like, if I put 5 fingers on you at any point, my quirk activates. So you find out how his quirk works. Like, how is he able to touch something and it's not decaying? Well, it's because he doesn't have all 5 fingers on you. Once he puts 5 fingers on, the decay activates and he's able to literally kill you in an instant, basically. So he says, how many people do you think I can kill in this mall before you can run and get heroes that can actually deal with me? Like, how long do you think it will take? How many do you think I can get? 30, 50, maybe 100? And as he's saying that, Deku's looking around, all the people, they're carefree. They're literally people in the mall like me and you.
Just living their life.
Just living their life.
They have no idea that a terrorist, a serial killer, or what is just like sitting there.
Yes, very serial killer-esque. So as he's saying that, it's a very scary scene because I was like, yo, what he's saying is so fucking true. Like, if he just went on a killing spree right now, sure. He even said it, like, sure, you guys will stop me eventually and I will be apprehended. But how many people you think I can kill? And that he knows that the thought of that specific thing, like, yeah, I will give myself up. I'll be in prison and everything, but I will kill so many people before you can stop me. And that, because of the character of Deku, that drives him crazy. That's torturous to him. Like, the thought that I can't do anything to stop this guy and he's going to start killing maybe 30 people on a low end is wild. Because all he has to do is put 5 fingers on you, die.
Yep.
But yeah, he doesn't actually end up killing Deku right there. And that's pretty much the end of that season. So that's season 2. Now, again, the turning point for me is season 3 because they go on a secret training. They go on a secret training in the mountains and it ends up getting leaked to the villains. And so this is when you find out that there may be some kind of spy or whatever within the organization.
Almost every time the heroes at this point, like, there's been all these events that have happened, and then somehow the villains keep becoming privy to it in one way or another. And this happens again, and this is where they finally go, like, there must be a spy, like, amongst the heroes. Like, there has to be a spy.
So they say it's a spy between the heroes or a spy in the children.
Yeah.
And so they go on a secret training in the mountains. And of course, it gets leaked to the villains. The villains show up, and there's this one fucking muscle quirk dude that honestly looks a bit like Bakugo.
Dude, I was like, I guess that's like, you know, as I'm going through this, I was like, is that Bakugo's dad?
I swear that guy was going to be related to Bakugo. He looks like an older Bakugo, but he's huge. He's like, his quirk is muscles, literally. So he, you know, they've run into this kid named Koda, who he does have a quirk, but he doesn't really like heroes because of what happened to his parents. Both his parents died being heroes. So this is another way of developing the world. This is like world building, because how would a kid feel if both his parents were police officers, but they both died in a line of duty?
Yep.
Like, go ahead.
He looks at it as like, heroes are stupid. Like, these heroes, like, you guys have a family. You guys have children. You went out and mind you, you're a child, right? So, like, if you're a child and your parents went out and died and your parents were gone all the time, went out and died saving other people, it's like, you guys didn't care enough about me to stay here with me. Like, I need
Yep,
you.
and
You're
that's
my
exactly how he
parents.
felt. He felt abandoned by them. The fact that they would do a dangerous line of work and be killed, he doesn't understand like why heroes do what they do. So that is great world building because you can imagine a lot of heroes have children and a lot of heroes have passed in their line of work. They're basically the police officers of the world, and I get it. Like my family, I don't have many police officers in my family, but Kenny, his father is a police officer.
Yeah,
Like that
I
is
said this. I don't remember what episode, but I brought this up before. I remember being a kid. Now I never resented my dad for being a cop. It's something that I thought was cool. Like, and but my point is like I remember being a kid, maybe like 6 or 7 years old. This is when I still believed in God, but I remember praying every night before you go to bed. You'd like say prayers, right?
yep.
And I remember every night praying like, "Hey, God, make sure my dad doesn't die like out being a
Yeah.
cop because like he'd be out working till 12 at night or 4 a.m. And I remember going to bed 6, 7, 8 years old praying that like my dad doesn't die.
Yeah, and think about that though. So you were fortunate enough to where your dad is still alive and well to this day, but it could have easily at any point gone wrong, and you could be fatherless because of his line of work. And that can affect people in different ways. So on one end, a kid could be like, okay, my dad was a hero. He died
Yeah,
being a hero, and I want to follow after him and become. That happens to people. They
that's
want to follow.
understandable.
They want to follow after and become exactly like their father. They're like, I want to honor him by doing what he did because I think that what he did was a great thing. It could also
And then
traumatize, and
there's the other side.
it could also traumatize the fuck out of you and make you resent your father for his line of work and resent police in general because you feel like, you guys don't even accomplish anything. There's all types of hateful rhetoric towards police officers that I don't need to even repeat here, but you guys get the idea. And that's what makes my hero again believable. Like I believe it because there's this kid who's an orphan walking around and he resents heroes because of his parents. And Deku could easily hate heroes because he was born quirkless and like, oh fuck you, I didn't. How people when they get rejected from something, they hate it.
Yeah.
Like for example, a guy catcalls a
Mm.
girl.
You weren't all that hot anyway. Like, you
Right.
weren't hot anyway.
Fuck you,
Ugly looking
bitch. You ain't
ass.
even all that good looking. Like,
Yeah.
you know how guys at one point they try to talk to a girl, the girl pays them dust, and then the guy gets angry about it. Instead of just being like, okay, I'll just try with another one or whatever, they give up and they immediately results in like resentment and anger. And so yeah, in a world where 80% of people have quirks and you're born without one, you could easily see how somebody would be like, I fucking hate people who have quirks. Like I hate them. Because it's jealousy. At the end of the day, it's like jealousy, which ends up evolving over time. So yes, Coda is a really cool character. He's introduced in season 3. And anyways, the villains are there, and come to find out they're targeting Bakugo. They're there to actually get Bakugo. And it's because they watched a sports festival and they saw the way he was and the fact that he had to be literally restrained and put to sleep with Midnight's quirk in order for him to accept being first place because he didn't like the way he won because Shoto basically gave up. Shoto could have maybe beat him, probably beat him, honestly. But Shoto at the very last minute decided not to use his fire side or whatever. And so he kind of like gave up. And Bakugo was pissed. And so Bakugo's freaking the fuck out. Like, and everybody's looking at this kid like, what is wrong with this kid? The League of Villains is looking at like, that's the one. That's the one we can get to turn. So they come there to capture him. And they don't succeed, but in all of that fighting and stuff, Deku goes like 1000%. He's been doing all kinds of shit. He goes over 100% or whatever to beat the muscle guy. And it's a really cool and well animated scene. I love it. The way he's about to be crushed literally by the overpowering muscle dude. And he just like with his back bent, he comes back up with all of this green electricity and all of this tenacity and just like punches this guy into a fucking mountain. And I thought that guy was dead. Like,
dude, the animation on this moment was so fucking sick. This is another one of those things where it's like the animation was insane.
It was. The animation.
I want to make a quick note. This is a debate that I've seen people have. I do not believe he really used 1,000% or 1,000,000%.
It would have killed him.
Yeah, people say like Deku used 1,000,000%. It was more so just like he was amping himself up. Like he was like, you know what I mean? Like
his body can't actually handle 100. So let alone like 1,000,000 is like, okay, like he can't actually handle that.
He was saying that to like motivate himself, push like that was him essentially saying like to go beyond plus ultra. Like that was just
kind
him
of how yelling
amping up
gives you an amp, like yelling in real life. Okay, so come to find out they were targeting Bakugo they do not completely succeed because they tried to capture Tokoyami, I think is his name, the bird falco looking character. They end up capturing in these little orbs of the magic guy's quirk. They capture Bakugo and Tokoyami, and Deku attempts to be heroic and save his friends. Now, this is where it really fucked me up. Deku fails in retrieving both. He does get one. He retrieves Tokoyami's orb, but Deku's orb, the god does a sleight of hand trick, and he's leaving. He's like, bye bye. He gets away. He gets away. So all the villains like skedaddle into portals. You know, no one can chase them at that point. Like they skedaddle, and they actually have Bakugo. And when they leave, because Deku was using everything he had, like he already fought the muscle guy, right? So he's already fucked up. Deku used whatever he had left in a tank to try to save Bakugo and fails. When the villains leave, the reaction he has when he falls on all fours and he screams, bro, I felt that shit. He's like crying because he hates that he couldn't save someone. Like it's such a paramount part of his character. And you feel it. Like when he's screaming and everyone's there, all the teachers are there who also like, you know, they couldn't do anything. He's literally screaming. It's
important to see because you can make the argument like, hey, if he didn't waste his time saving Koda, yes, he could have saved Bakugo. You know what I mean? Yep. But like Deku's not the type of person to choose between two people, even if the other person is his best friend. Best friend, sort of.
Yeah. Love-hate relationship. But that is one of his closest friend. Like somebody you grew up with. So you guys might have drifted apart a bit, but like you know that man.
Yeah, but he's gonna save everybody he can. He's gonna save this kid that's right here in front of him and save Bakugo and save everybody else. And like he fails to do that, and that fucking destroys him. And once again, it's like he's crying here, but he's not a crybaby because to jump ahead, a similar thing happens when All Might ends up coming and he fails to save Bakugo in a moment, and then he's like the screen. It's scary. Like it's not even like just heartbreaking.
Yes, it
when
is.
The face and the art on All Might's face when he fails to save Bakugo in like the one instance is fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So finish what you were saying.
So when he's crying, that is that's a legitimate reason. If one of your friends got captured by some fucking guys and you don't know what they're going to do, you don't know what their plan is. It's not clear what they plan to do to Bakugo. They could be torturing him until he gives up secrets or whatever, then kill him. It could be anything. And Shigaraki's already said some crazy shit to you, so you feel like, coming off the season 2, the mall scene, you feel like, yo, they could kill my friend and then leave his body parts scattered around. Anything could happen. The worst is going through your head. And at the end of the day, you couldn't save him. So that's a big character development moment. It initiates the Bakugo retrieval arc, which I thought was going to take way longer because I thought that Bakugo was going to go through this whole intense thing through several chapters and several episodes where he's slowly being coerced into being a villain. That's what I thought at the time. Come to find out, they show you all of the villains surrounding Bakugo while he's tied up, and I'm trying to coerce him, and he's just cursing him out. Like, literally profanity. Like, you fucking shitheads. I hate all of you. Untie me right now so I can show you what for, you fucking assholes. Like, he's going ham. And they're like, yo, this guy is crazy. He's a little firecracker, literally. Anyways, I thought that it was going to take much longer, but Deku and Lita come up with a plan that they're going to go save Bakugo, even though they were told to stand down. Like, the adults are going to take care of this, because now a child has been kidnapped. And everything that happens with the heroes is aired on the news, for better or for worse. So, like, parents hearing that a child, like, especially a child with parents and everything, like, not some orphan kid, like, your child was literally stolen from school, like, kidnapped from school, out on some kind of secret mountain expedition, that would scare pretty much every parent in the world to make them want to withdraw their children from UA. So it's really a bad look. It's a bad look. And also, people got injured. A lot of the teachers got injured. At one point, like, Dobby showed up and was fucking with Eraserhead real bad. It was bad. Like, people got fucked up in its entire arc. So this is a really good arc. And like I said, this is the turning point for me. Right after this, with the whole Bakugo retrieval arc, All Might and the heroes, like the top 10 heroes, literally show up immediately to the hideout where the villains are. They like got the information real quick of where they were hiding out at, where they had Bakugo, and I thought that it was going to be I thought the arc would end. I thought season 3 would end before they do anything about it.
Yeah.
Like I did, because that's just the pacing of typical shonen, is that if somebody gets captured, like Sasuke got captured and that shit wasn't resolved for 3 years. The next time you see Sasuke was fucking 3 years. Like Sasuke went through a 3-year time skip. So I was like, oh God, Bakugo is probably not going to be seen again until he's actually evil. Like the next time I see him, he might be in all black. And I said his quirk, this is great writing. His quirk is designed to be evil.
Yeah.
His quirk
He's fucked up.
His quirk is a terroristic quirk. Like it is a perfect quirk to be an evil guy. So I thought the stage is set. This is going to be the most cliche manga anime ever. The guy's one of his best friends / one of his closest friends is going to become an evil guy. And I've seen this already. I was so ready for it. And then not even like 2 episodes later, they stormed the hideout and they fucked the villains up so bad that at one point, Shigaraki, while his whole crew is being destroyed by All Might, he's saying in his head, why are you here? You're not supposed to be here. You're the last boss. This isn't fair. This is not how the game is supposed to go. Because he has this weird thing, kind of like L and Nier and Mello, how they all have these little quirks. He has this quirk where he considers everything that's going on to be a game, which I like about him too. And like we are approaching an hour and a half in this episode, and I feel like there's so much to say about my hero. But
there is, man.
Shigaraki has this thing where he thinks everything is a game. And his boss, All For One, also treats everything like a game. And so when All Might shows up, he's raging at the thought that, imagine you're playing a video game and the last boss literally shows up at any random encounter that you have. Like you're just in the field fighting a random boss, it's an RPG. You're fighting a regular enemy. And the last boss of the game, while you're at level 5, shows up and just one-shots you. And like, what the fuck, bro? Like, that's not fun. That's not how this is supposed to go. You are literally the strongest guy in the world from his Shigaraki's knowledge. Like, you're the strongest in the world. And honestly, at that point, he still was. And it's like, why do I have to deal with you? I'm a kid. I'm trying to start my League of Villains, my little play league or whatever. And you're the fucking final boss. Like, that's not fair. So he rages. But at the same time, and I love saying that because Hunter x Hunter made at the same time sounds so fire. At the same time, you get your first your first reveal of All For One in person and what he can do. And it is wild. So Best Jeanist meets All For One in an alleyway. And Best Jeanist is the number 4 hero in the world, so he's very strong. And my man gets fucking one shot. Like he gets one shot with the quickness. And when he gets one shot, All For One says some crazy thing like, I'm surprised you survived that. And only thing that you suffered was every one of your bones is broken and all this other crazy shit. Like he fires a blast at him. Mind you, we didn't know at the time what his powers were. So it's like, what did he hit him with? Like, you don't even know what actually happened. You just see a blast of like air kind of fire in Best Jeanist's direction. And the next time you see him, he's just in rubble. Like he's covered in rubble, bleeding, unconscious. And apparently all his bones are broken and shit like that. Like he's done. Mm-hmm. And All For One's like, I'm surprised you're not dead from that. I'm surprised you were able to take that without dying. Anyways, so All For One is ridiculous. And he shows up to kind of assist Shigaraki. He's like, listen, as long as I'm here, the whole point is that you can reset as many times as you need to. Like, don't worry about it. Every time you fail, I'm here to pick you up and reset the stage. And it literally talking to him in video game terms. Like,
and also like a father almost. Like he's saying like, no matter what happens, like I'll always be here. I'll pick you back up. You'll be able to try again. And it's just so interesting because on one end, it's such a motivational, heartwarming thing. Like I'm there for you no matter what. Yes. Like I'll always be there for you to get up and do it again. But it's also fucking terrifying and sinister because they're not talking about becoming the best basketball player. They're talking about fucking killing people on the planet and like dismantling society as we know it. Like they're talking about awful shit.
It's great. I love the fact that he would talk to him like you said, like he's trying to motivate a kid to be a better basketball player. Like, you can fail, it's okay, just keep practicing. But that is how he's talking to him, but also in video game terms. So anyway, Bakugo gets teleported away, and this is the scene you were talking about where All Might feels like he failed because Bakugo is not in his possession. Like he failed to completely secure him again. And so All For One has Bakugo, and All Might arrives at the scene, and this is we've brought this up multiple times now. This is one of the different episodes. This is one of the craziest fucking things I've seen in anime. Like I love it because even though they're not on the level of like Goku and Beerus or like end of series Naruto and Sasuke, within the verse though, the power level that you see when All for One and All Might actually fight is wild from the very first punch. Like All Might comes in with a punch and literally All for One grabs both of his hands and he says, "You're late. Like you've gotten slower." But the way he grabs both of All Might's hands, up until this point, All Might's punches have been so outrageous that he could punch at something. Like in episode 1 when he fought the slime monster, he could punch at something and kill it. So
yep,
when
just
he
blow it apart.
So when
we saw when he in the one season, like we mentioned, when he's doing the exam and he's all weighted down, he fucking punches down a city block and the buildings start to like crumble.
Yes.
Like the buildings start to like kind of like crush a little bit, like, and the wind blow, like he's absurd.
Yes. So when you see him angry because he just yelled really bad because Bakugo like wasn't again procured by him, he's angry at this moment. And he comes in, we've not gotten to see him actually this angry. He comes in pissed. And so you know that he's pretty much gotten an amp because like angry people tend to be stronger. But All for One grabs both of All Might's hands, 0 difficulty, and only thing that happens is he kind of slides back a little bit, but he fully captures All Might's blow in both his hands and then taunts him and starts talking shit. So I immediately tension because I'm like, this guy has to be outrageous. Like this guy has to be so fucking unreal to be able to do that.
Immediately it shows you how believable it is because first of all, we know that this is the guy, even though All Might won, we know that this is the guy that permanently injured All Might however many years ago. And then on top of that, even with that aside, in any situation, it's like I've heard people say this about Dragon Ball Super. Sometimes it's hard to take Dragon Ball Super seriously because we know that at the end of the day, above Goku, there's Beerus. So like no matter what the threat is, like Beerus is there. And so it's like,
that's true.
Is it really a threat? So similar in My Hero, it's like no matter what the threat is, All Might is there. And so when All Might shows up though, and you see that like right off the rip,
he's struggling.
This ain't gonna go the way you think it's gonna go. You're like, oh shit.
And also, I just want to say this too, because I saw the anime for this before I saw the manga for this particular part where they first fight, and I still think this is one of the best fights in all of anime. I think this is one of the best parts in anime. Is these two? The first time they meet is so epic. Because it's been built up, but it's like you didn't expect it to happen this early, and it has the stakes are so high. The voice acting though of All for One with that fucking helmet thing that he has on, the way he sounds when he talks is so evil. He sounds like a villain. Like if I had to ever think about what the quintessential villain sounds like, All for One sounds like the quintessential villain in Japanese. My man sounds terrifying. He sounds terrifying. He sounds so sinister, so evil. He has this really ignorant and fucking rude ass laugh. Like his laugh is just the most ominous shit you've ever heard. And he also kind of speaks, not even kind of, he just blatantly talks down to people. But they start fighting, and that's a big epic moment. I'm not going to go over a recap of the whole fight, but a lot of things happen. At the end of it, All Might does win, but he wins at the cost of using the last embers of One for All. So he uses the last embers of, and they even show it in this really cool way. It's like a blizzard. You see a naked version of All Might in his emaciated body form. So where he's like really skinny and fucked up. You see a small All Might, and in a blizzard with this tiny flame in between his hands.
He's just like trying to cultivate it, trying to keep that ember alive as long as he can.
Yes. And so in order to protect everyone, because at this point, if he loses, it could be honestly the end of everything. Like losing catastrophic. It would be catastrophic if he lost here. So he gives it his all, and he is also very injured at this moment too. In fact, it's so much to the point where he can't even hold his form anymore. Part of his form is he's like half emaciated, half like bulk.
Yeah, he can't even keep the full buff form. He's half fucked up. He looks like so messed up. And by the way, for some reason, this is being televised. So like the whole world is watching this fight. This is being televised, and then
people have never seen him like this either, by the way. Deku is the only person who's seen him like this.
Yeah, and so there's like an awesome moment where like even through all of this, there's like this random lady that he happens to like saved from like being absolutely killed. He like
Yeah.
stops a blow from killing her and destroying her, and it's just beautiful. And
he gets
yeah, go ahead.
really fucked up. And essentially he's always been known as a symbol of peace. So this is why, again, I call this season the turning point. Because up until this point, All Might has always been a symbol of peace, and everyone basically can live freely with the understanding and the belief that if anything got too bad, All Might is always around.
Yep.
Okay, it's the same thing in Naruto, or Boruto, I should say, where like Naruto and Sasuke exist, so things can never go too wrong, right? And that does create a problem because it's hard to believe any sign of danger is a real sign of danger. But in this case, this is the guy, like you said, who's injured All Might, so the stakes are really high. He
And
ends
that's what I
up
was trying
winning.
to say. I was like stuttering because I couldn't. There was something I was trying to say because I had the thought and I forgot it.
That happens.
Once again, we know from the beginning we didn't get to see this fight, but All Might and All for One, they fought in their quote unquote prime. All Might wins and he's permanently injured, loses like half of his internal organs, right? So this happens again. They fight again, and All Might wins again, but he always wins at a huge cost. And the cost this time is like All Might wins, but now he loses all of his powers. And what's even more heart unsettling about this is All for One doesn't seem pressed that he fucking lost.
Yeah, it's actually kind of wild. Like this entire little arc, because season 3 is actually so long. Like the number of things that happened in this season are wild. This is only the halfway point, basically. And you're running into the end game boss on both sides. Like Shigaraki, from his perspective, he ran into the end game boss. And then on the hero side, they ran into the end game boss. And both of them are real. Like both of them are actually too real for the other side. So in this fight, or I should say at the end of it, the way he does the little trick, United States of Smash, that like switching what part of his body's bulked and everything, epic. Beautiful. I'm sure Kenny loves that part. My best friend also fucking absolutely loves United States of Smash. One of the best things he's ever seen. Also for me, like it's honestly top 10, like as far as anime fights.
He hit him with all 50 states.
So good.
hit him with all 50 of them.
So good. But at the end of it, the symbol of peace thing is All Might is holding up his arm, and he says, "You're next." And the whole world is seeing him in his emaciated form now. They're seeing him not buffed up. He looks terrible. His clothes are all tattered and fucked up. And there's like, who is that? Is that really All Might? So people are genuinely shocked and honestly afraid that this is the guy that's supposed to be tasked with protecting them from here on out. And he says, "You're next," as though he's passing the mantle. He's talking to obviously to Deku. But he also knows that when he did the United States of Smash, that was the last embers of his quirk. So he's basically quirkless now. And they kind of showed us a little after this where he says, "I can go into my bulk form literally for a second."
Yeah, and then
like I can go, but I can't do anything. Like they just want us to understand as viewers, don't think that he might just have a little bit more in the tank. He doesn't. Like he's actually
there's no gas in the tank. At this point, they kind of solidify like All Might is not a get out of jail free card anymore. Like we've taken All Might off the table. And another awesome moment about that your next thing is I remember at the time, before it goes a bit further and has it happened in the moment, a lot of the people in the world and the crowd, they thought that you're next almost meant like you're next to the villains. Like, I'm coming for you guys next.
Yeah.
And then Deku's sitting in the crowd because Deku knows exactly what he means and he's crying. And this is where Bakugo fully realizes Deku and All Might's relationship, because Bakugo looks at this and he sees Deku's crying. And this is where he realizes, like, because after this, I think it's like the next episode is when we get Bakugo versus Deku.
Yes.
And Bakugo goes to Deku and he's like, "Hey, like you got your power from All Might, didn't you?" And like he creates this moment, and then once again, another one of the best fucking fight scenes I've ever seen.
Oh my god, dog! The way he said, "I'm not going to be your punching bag," those two fighting was so fucking insane. When he said, "I'm not going to be your punching bag," because at first I was like, "Oh, is he really just going to let Bakugo just tee off on him and not do anything?" Because like that is kind of an anime protagonist thing to do sometimes, like let your friend just beat on you and not do anything. But man, I was not expecting him to fuck him up like that.
And once again, this goes back to something you said earlier about tension, is that we have all of this built up. We have the symbol of peace almost like falling, him officially passing the mantle to Deku, because a lot of times before this, he wanted Deku, without anybody knowing Deku had his power, to prove himself as a hero so that people would be ready to accept Deku. And so, like, this is kind of the point where Deku has to take up the mantle, and we've seen All Might kind of crumble now, all this shit. And now we get to this part, all this relationship between Bakugo and Deku. Now they confront each other and they're fighting. There's tension here. These people are childhood friends.
Yep.
They know each other. There's a back and forth. We slowly, with each season, learn a little bit more about Bakugo, why he's such a little asshat, and like how it starts to make sense. And like their fight, this is something that some series don't understand. A good fight scene isn't just being well animated and cool looking.
Right.
This is well animated and cool looking, but for all of that flash, what makes you really fucking hype and excited is that there's weight and tension, there's drama behind the fight. It's not just flashing lights. And that drama, that tension really holds it together and draws you in and makes you so much more interested in every little spin move and flip kick that ends up happening.
It's really epic. This is also the season where Deku learns that he could use his goddamn feet. For whatever reason, All Might never uses his feet. Everything is a punch with him. And so Deku naturally adopted the exact same fighting style using the same quirk. But they were like, yo, how can we develop new special moves? And Deku gets the idea basically from, and this is another thing I love about this character. He learns from the other classmates. Like he learns from other people. So from Lita, the guy who literally his quirk is all about his legs and how fast he can go and stuff like that. And he has reciprocal bursts, all these cool things with his legs. He learns by combining Lita's technique with like some other stuff. Ida. He learns from combining Ida's technique with like other people that he can use his legs with like why couldn't he use his legs with One For All? Like obviously legs also hit harder than fists. So he learns shoot style, as they call it. And so this is a big development for him as a character because it's something that All Might never did. And honestly, it's kind of crazy that All Might conquered the whole world with just his arms, but like, go off.
That's just the kind of fighter he was, yeah.
That's just how powerful he was. That just shows you, God, that quirk is not okay. But yes.
That's another interesting, realistic thing about Deku's intelligence, because like we both said, he's smart, but there's always blind spots and tunnel vision in everybody, right? So even though he's smart and he analyzes things, there's like obvious things where he's like, why didn't I think of that before?
Yes.
And like,
because he always thinks of like really high level shit.
Yeah, and it takes like an epiphany moment where he goes, "Oh shit!" And like, and that happens in real life where you have an epiphany moment. And you're like, "Why did I not think of that a year ago?" You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
So the fight between Deku and Bakugo has a lot of development in it for both of them. Mainly for Bakugo though, because at the time you didn't really know that Bakugo's actually a hardcore fan of All Might as well.
Yeah,
and so he's very, very jealous. Because a lot of things have happened right after the whole All For One thing. They have like the whole license test, and Bakugo doesn't get his license. Like everyone else does, except Bakugo, Shoto, and like one other person.
Even before that, right? Because the fight's before that, right?
No, the fight is after that.
After the license test?
Yeah, because remember, Bakugo is angry that Deku is surpassing him. Deku is surpassing him in every way, and he also realizes that Deku has this quirk. Like, it's multiple things compounding that's making him so jealous. It's like, you're my rival, but your quirk is actually...
And he started off so far behind me, and like you're catching up.
And now you surpass me. Like, you have your license and I fucking don't have it. Like, that's a big deal. Like, that is a huge deal for him. So the fact that like Deku just walking around now, Deku is considered a hero. Like, he has a provisional license, and Bakugo doesn't. So that's a slap in the face to someone who started off quirkless, now having a quirk and also having a license before you. Then come to find out the guy who you idolize secretly, and it wasn't a secret in the verse, but it was a secret to us. Like, they didn't reveal it to us until now. You find out that the toys they play with as kids, like Bakugo had toys of All Might too. Come to find out, like, Bakugo is a big fan of All Might. So for All Might to trust Deku with this quirk and everything, it makes him angry. And that's why he approaches him in the middle of the night. He's like, yo, I want to talk to you. Let's walk down the street. And then they end up getting into this fight. But that fight is like the second to the last thing that happens in the season. The last thing that happens in season 3 is the big 3 reveal with Mirio, Tamaki, and Nedry. But yes, so chronological order, whatever.
And during that fight, there's also a moment where, like you said, we this is where we learned that Bakugo is a All Might fan, and this is where we see Bakugo cry, because he cries and opens up, and he says like, All Might lost his powers because of me. Like, I wasn't strong enough. Like, because growing up, he always saw and idolized that, and this is so cool. This is why the villains couldn't turn Bakugo, because Bakugo grew up watching All Might. No matter how many villains he was up against, no matter what the odds were, All Might always won, no matter how many people he was fighting.
Yeah.
And that's what Bakugo idolized. That's what he wanted to be. So when he's sitting there surrounded by villains, they're trying to turncoat him. He's like, fuck all of y'all. I'm going to take all of you the fuck out, because that's what he idolized. And so that's why you could, even though he was a shithead and he was an asshat and he had a bad attitude, there was something under all that we didn't understand yet. And that all came from a place of like some part arrogance, but another part pride and then idolization of All Might. And he's not taking any of their shit sitting down. And so he's crying and breaking down because All Might, his hero, and everyone's hero, has now lost his powers, and it's his fault. He got captured and he wasn't good enough.
And that's how he feels at the end of the fight. Bakugo does end up winning in the coolest fucking way. And then All Might shows up. All Might shows up and he stops, he basically, all right, enough is enough, because that level of force that you're using, that you guys are using, is now no longer friendly. Like, it's gotten to the point where the next couple blows somebody will die at this point, basically. Most likely Bakugo, because Deku, if he uses like 20% or 100% or whatever, like a kid just cannot. So yeah, it's to the point where he stops the fight. Bakugo's like, All Might, you gave him your powers, didn't you? And so, it comes out and he says, I'm going to keep the secret. Like, I love that Bakugo, he changes so much right here for us, but this is the person that he kind of always was, but he changes a lot for us because now we realize, like, oh, this is where it comes from. This is why he's always yelling and so angry at Deku all the time. He's jealous of Deku. And it's kind of like the same thing as Sasuke in a way, where he does want more power, but not at the sake of being evil. Where Sasuke wants it by any means necessary. And this is my mistake in believing that this was going to be a cliche shonen. I thought that Bakugo was literally a Sasuke clone. Like, the way that they even set it up, I honestly think that the writers set it up to look like that.
It might have been, on purpose to make you, like, because at this point, Naruto's one of the most, like, he knows.
Yes, you probably.
And it's in the same magazine, right? Yes. Like, it's in the Shonen Jump magazine. Yes. So it's like, you probably read Naruto. Like, you might think you know where this is going, but.
Yeah, and so at the end of this fight, he agrees to keep the secrets. I'm like, damn, that's actually really cool. Like, he's not even going to be an asshole about it. He's not going to go and tell everybody to fuck over Deku and like put all this shit on him. He's like, yeah, I'm going to keep the secret because that's the love I have for All Might and the respect I have for the decision that he made with this quirk. But he also tells Deku, your shoot style windup is too long. You need to correct that. And that made me love him so much, because he's obviously reluctant to help Deku in any way because that's his competition. But at the same time, the bigger goal is being a better hero. And I was like, wow, telling him that will make Deku even, like, if you think Deku's already ahead, that will make him even better. Like, you helping him to improve, because you just fought him. And he tried to use the shoe style, but it didn't work. And Deku just had the result of just using fisticuffs at some point, right? But like, he told him, they'll wind up on your attacks. It takes too long. You have crazy openings when you go for shoot style. And I love that, because in the provisional license thing, Deku was testing out the shoot style. He was using it or whatever, but it's strong because it's his legs. But at the same time, he didn't realize on his own that, when you go for that shit, anybody who's fast, or just like anybody who's experienced really, is going to be able to exploit how long the attacks take to come out. So they actually help each other at the end of the fight. They both give each other advice on things they can improve upon. And I love that.
And that's an important moment, because everything we know from Bakugo, and like, there's people out there that hate him because he's an asshole. That moment, it's a small passing moment, and it's like the subtext of it says a lot, where we now know and see that one of the big reasons why he's an asshat and all this other shit is like, he felt like he was so far ahead, and he wants to be so far ahead. He wants to be the new All Might. That Deku, somebody that was quirkless, catching up, he feels like he's not moving fast enough, all this other shit. But throughout all of that, and throughout the frustration that he's holding toward Deku, he still goes, hey, this is how you can be better.
Yeah, because I love that moment. That moment was heartfelt as hell.
That shows so much more character, because in this moment, he knows that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, he, as his own self, also has to get better. And so, like,
I will not lose.
There's no point in hiding it from Deku. Like, it's just awesome. Like, he takes a moment, helps him get better. He's going to help himself get better. And like, it's a really big driving moment for him.
And honestly, so again, season 3 is like one of the best arcs of My Hero up till this point. Just because of the development with all the characters, and so much happens in the All for One versus like All Might fight. There's a lot that goes on. The end of this arc, and I think where we're going to end the podcast off for this section of My Hero. This will be part 1 of the My Hero podcast, because we are literally approaching the 2-hour mark, and there are multiple seasons left after this one to talk about, I'm realizing. So we'll probably cover seasons 4, 5, and 6 after 6 concludes, and we can just like come back to it at that point. But this season ends with the reveal of the big 3, and me and Kenny, one of our absolute favorite heroes, probably like both of our favorite heroes. I mean, my favorite hero is Deku, just because I relate to him a lot, but like close second is Mirio. Mirio is in fucking sane.
Mirio Tagut, aka Lemillion, dude.
Yes, that
the
guy,
man who will save a million. Like, he is.
That guy is so fire, and apparently there's like a lot of lore about him, and yeah, we can get into that in the next episode. I don't even want to, because like even opening up too much on that is that'll be a half-hour conversation just talking about Lemillion and what happens to him in season 4, and like the Night Eye stuff, and
the next arc and the stuff. Oh man, I love that shit so much. I guess before we jump out, I want to give like a quick talk about there's this side manga called My Hero Academia Vigilantes.
Okay.
Not many people know about it. It is written by. It's not directly written by. I think his name Hoshi. I forget the author's name. It's not directly written by the guy that writes My Hero. It's written by, I think, one of his other writers, like one of his guys. But it is overseen by him, and as far as I know, it is canon. And he oversees some of the plots. Vigilantes is really good. Now, I didn't read all of it. I didn't get current, but I read the whole first like arc or first saga, and if there's like. Basically, I read it because I was current with My Hero at the time, and like I wanted more My Hero. If you really like My Hero and you're interested in more facets of the world, check out My Hero Academia Vigilantes. It's about the guys who don't get a hero. They don't get a hero license, but they still go out and like try to save people. And because they don't have a license, they're technically criminals. They're vigilantes. They're not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. They're not allowed to use their powers to save people. But you meet some really cool characters and see some really cool aspects of the world from this other side, and it's just really interesting. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to give any spoilers. I know a lot of people haven't seen it. I know Fraser hasn't read it, but as a side note, something I would love for them to do is like we get a My Hero Academia season like once a year, and it makes sense. They want to give time for the manga, etc. I would love if it was like we got a My Hero Academia season, and then 6 months later they gave us like a Vigilante season. Like if they started adapting that manga. And then, like, 6 months after that, we got, like, My Hero Prime again. I don't know. Vigilantes is really cool, a really heartwarming story. And there's just some cool quirks, cool aspects in there, cool fights, and really, really cool characters. There's a part, the reason why I stopped reading it was that I almost got, like, heartbroken. Like, the things that these shows can make you feel, there's a part, and I got to the end of the arc, and I was, like, sad. It was, like, that's how good it was, is what I'm saying. It's like... Damn. I felt like like, you know how sometimes you get to the end of like a really good game or a good movie or a good TV show, and you kind of like feel a little depressed, a little empty.
And it's crazy because no one around you understands what you just experienced.
Yes, no one gets it, and you're just like in a mood where you're like, fuck. And I got to the end of this arc, and I just was like, damn it, man. And like it really like I felt it, and then I ended up not getting around. I'm going to get back to reading it eventually, but it made it so I didn't go on reading it anymore because like it was such a point for me, and I was like, holy shit. That's just to say that like this side story of My Hero is also still really good and worth reading if you want some more My Hero content.
Well, all right. Before we completely wrap up this episode, I just want to give a shout out to the people who are supporting us over at Patreon because you guys are fucking awesome. So without further ado, let me give a shout out to Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garrett, Xavier, Hylian, TCG Automotive, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Giovanni Avalos, Henri Reynolds, CJ, Dubk Dad 1, Saul at Dabber's Gaming Cafe, and also Dank Ritual, Dan Varable, Dennis Milburn, Joseph Marcello, First to Home, Dallas Fernares, S. Akuma, Mitchell Niles, Midwest Gaming, William Shapiro, Demetrius Safirtis, Vince Marquette, Dallas Bailey, Roz Weiss, Nick Stengel, Scott Polera, Hansel, our two-time national champion, Vincent Zen, Sarah Maria, Sunny Top Cut Podcast, Alex Ahern, Philip Campa, Jalen Haskins, Arale Melfi Slump, and Dominic Couch. Thank you guys so much for supporting the podcast. If you guys want access to exclusive episodes that only drop on Patreon, or if you would like video versions of the podcast, you can find that on our Patreon. So check that out. Also, we have a Discord server where people discuss like podcast suggestions, honestly, at this point, our Discord server has everything. This morning, I was looking through it, like just looking at all the channels. There's a sports channel. I never go in there, but there's a sports channel. There's a fashion channel. There's like video games. There's a Game of Thrones dedicated channel, like a Marvel channel, TV shows, memes, Yu-Gi-Oh, like all type general discussion. Obviously, just a whole bunch. There's a ton of channels, and honestly, people just posting them all the time, and I don't always get to them. But like,
it's hard to keep up with all of them for sure.
There's a lot going on, but the good thing is like we're building a community. So there's just discussions happening without me and Kenny needing to be there for every single one of them. And I love that. Like people are just talking and out, we jump in every once in a while to give our like 2 cents, but it's just really cool that we're building like this IMNerd podcast community. So if you want access to that Discord server, check out our Patreon. At the very lowest tier, if you want to support, you actually get access to it permanently. So like outside of you doing something crazy, but you get access to this Discord server permanently by just joining the Patreon at the lowest tier. And then we have all these other perks for the higher tiers, like exclusive episodes and stuff. So if you're interested in that type of thing, check out I'm Their Podcast on patreon.com. And as I always say, guys, do the things that make you happy. We will be recording another My Hero episode to cover the next couple seasons and just to kind of talk more about this, because I have a lot to say about some of the characters that come up later. And it's like a whole thing with them too. Like the way Night Eye feels, the way Muriel feels, and Chisaki, like overhauled, like the whole thing. Eri as a character, her first smile, like there's a lot actually. There's a ton. And then My Villain Academia is an entire thing in itself.
Just as a quick thing on that note, and if you've seen it, you've seen it. The school festival, which is a part that a lot of people I've heard don't like. The school festival and the song they play, and then like Eri's first smile. When I tell you, like tears, like I felt it, man. Like I legit teared the fuck up. Like that moment, and then even Jiro, the song she's singing, and like the little flashback that it has where she's like sees her parents and see Eri and all of that stuff, man. Like it hits me fucking hard.
I really liked the whole festival thing. I like Gentle Criminal and that whole like the power of love, that entire thing, and then him getting the long range attacks. Again, you can see just by us trying to speed through a little synopsis of how much content there is there. And I just think it would be a disservice to try to cram that into another like half hour
and that's skipping of this. All that's skipping the whole arc that came before the ship.
Yes, there's a whole arc there. And there's like, and we don't necessarily recap literally everything that happens, but we kind of talk about like this episode. I'm actually proud of us. We talked about concepts more than we talked about just like trying to make sure you guys know everything that happened, because assumedly you have already read or watched My Hero. So like a recap is nice to just hear like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. But it's also more so, let's drive these points home. Let's drive these like concepts home about the characters and how we feel about them, how we feel about Deku as a person, how we feel about Bakugo and All Might and a symbol of peace and like the symbol of terror and all these things. So again, I'm really proud of just the way we were able to handle that without just literally giving them a recap. There's 100 recap YouTube videos out there, and this is not meant to be that. So but we will be talking about the other seasons because the characters develop more and they become more believable and more human, and like they go through all types of shit, and the Todoroki family still goes through more nonsense. So it's a lot, but it's good stuff. Anyways, do the things that make you happy. We're getting the hell out of here.
Go beyond plus ultra.